The dust had barely settled from the stampede when Amelia Windsor saw the dead cattle stretched across the valley like broken fence posts, their bloated bodies already drawing buzzards in the late afternoon sun of June, 1884. She stood at the edge of the disaster, her traveling dress soiled from 3 days of hard riding, and counted at least 40 head lying motionless in the California heat. The ranch foreman who had hired her father's veterinary practice back in San Francisco had written that they were losing cattle to some mysterious ailment, but nothing in his terse telegram had prepared her for this scale of devastation. Her father would have known what to do immediately, would have examined the carcasses and identified the disease within an hour, but her father had died of pneumonia 6 weeks ago, leaving Amelia with nothing but his veterinary books, his reputation, and a desperate need to prove she could carry on his work. "You the veterinarian?" The voice came from behind her, rough and skeptical. Amelia turned to find a cowboy watching her from atop a dusty chestnut mare. He was perhaps 24 or 25, lean and sun-darkened, with eyes the color of whiskey and a jaw that suggested he did not smile often. Sweat stained his shirt, and his leather chaps were worn nearly white in places. Everything about him spoke of hard work and harder living. "I am Amelia Windsor, representing Windsor Veterinary Services," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the doubt she saw in his expression. "My father was Dr. Jonathan Windsor. Perhaps you have heard of him." The cowboy dismounted with the fluid grace of someone who had spent more time on horseback than on foot. "Heard of your father, yes. Heard he died. Didn't hear he had a daughter who thought she could do his work." The word stung, but Amelia had expected worse. She had been fighting this battle since she was 16, sitting in on her father's consultations when her mother thought she was practicing needlepoint. "I have been studying veterinary medicine for 6 years. I have assisted my father on hundreds of cases. Whether you believe in my capabilities or not, your cattle are dying and I am here to help." He studied her for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to the heavy leather satchel at her feet, which contained her father's most precious medical instruments and textbooks. "Name's Austin Northwood. I'm the head wrangler on the Circle K ranch." "The owner, Mr. Kimball. He's the one who sent for your father. He's not going to be pleased to see you instead." "Then we shall have to ensure I solve his cattle problem before he has time to lodge complaints," Amelia said crisply. She walked toward the nearest dead steer, grateful that her father had insisted she witness every aspect of veterinary work, including the unpleasant parts. The smell was terrible, but she had smelled worse in the slaughterhouses where her father had taught her about anatomy. Austin followed her, his boots crunching on the dry grass. "What are you looking for? Signs of disease? Discoloration, discharge, swelling, anything that might tell me what killed these animals?" She knelt beside the carcass, wishing she had something to cover her dress with, but there was no help for it. Her reputation mattered more than her wardrobe. She examined the steer carefully, noting the bloating and the foam around its mouth. The eyes were bloodshot, the tongue swollen and protruding slightly. She moved to another carcass and found similar symptoms, then a third with the same presentation. "I need to see the sick cattle that are still alive," she said, standing and brushing off her skirt as best she could. "And I need to examine their feed, their water sources, and the pastures they have been grazing." Austin's expression had shifted from skepticism to something closer to curiosity. "You sound like you know what you're doing." "I do know what I am doing, Mr. Northwood. The question is whether you and Mr. Kimball will allow me to do it." He almost smiled then, just a slight quirk at the corner of his mouth. "Ranch is 2 miles north. I'll take you to the boss, but I'm warning you now, he's got a temper like a rattlesnake with a headache." Amelia gathered her satchel and followed Austin to his horse. He offered her a hand up behind him, and she hesitated only a moment before accepting. She had ridden behind ranch hands before while working with her father, but there was something different about the solid warmth of Austin Northwood's back. The way his muscles shifted as he guided the mare northward across the Golden Hills. The Circle K Ranch sprawled across a valley between two ridges of oak-covered hills, with a main house built of timber and stone, several barns, a bunkhouse, and an extensive network of corrals and pens. Amelia could see cattle scattered across the distant pastures, but even from here, she noticed some lying down in the heat when they should have been seeking shade or water. Mr. Kimball was exactly as Austin had described, a barrel-chested man in his 50s with a face like weathered granite and a voice that could probably be heard in the next county. His reaction to Amelia's arrival was explosive. A woman, a girl. I sent for Jonathan Windsor, the best cattle veterinarian in California, and they send me his daughter. My father is dead, Mr. Kimball, Amelia said quietly. I am the only Windsor veterinarian available. You may send me away if you wish, but while you waste time arguing about my qualifications, more of your cattle will die. I have examined the carcasses in the valley, and I believe I can identify the disease if you allow me to examine your sick animals and their environment. Kimball's face turned an alarming shade of purple. You believe you can identify it. I don't need beliefs, I need certainty. I need someone who knows what they're doing. Pa, maybe we should let her try. A younger man emerged from the barn, bearing a strong resemblance to Kimball but with a gentler expression. We've lost near 100 head in 3 weeks. Can't hurt to see what she has to say. Stay out of this, Thomas, Kimball snapped. This is ranch business. Austin, who had been standing silently beside Amelia, spoke up. The lady knew what to look for out there, boss. She examined those dead steers like she'd done it 1,000 times, and she's right about one thing: we're losing cattle every day we wait. Kimball glared at Austin, then at Amelia, then back at his son. Finally, he threw up his hands. Fine. You've got 2 days to figure out what's killing my herd, but you stay in the main house where Mrs. Kimball can keep an eye on you. I won't talk about impropriety on my ranch. I would prefer to stay near the cattle, Amelia said. I may need to observe them at night. Not negotiable, Kimball growled. You're a woman alone on a ranch with 30 men. You'll stay in the house or you'll leave. Those are your choices. Amelia swallowed her frustration and nodded. She had learned to pick her battles. Very well, but I will need assistance. Someone who knows the cattle, who can show me the sick animals and answer my questions about their feeding and grazing patterns. Kimball jerked his thumb at Austin. Northwood knows this ranch better than anyone except me. He'll help you, but Austin, if she's wasting our time, you tell me straight. Austin met his employer's gaze steadily. Yes, sir, Mrs. Kimball proved to be a pleasant surprise. A weathered but kind woman who showed Amelia to a small bedroom and offered her water to wash with and a clean apron to protect her dress. Don't mind my husband, she said softly. He's worried sick about the ranch. We've put everything we have into this place. I understand, Amelia said. I will do everything in my power to help. I believe you will, dear. Now, there's stew on the stove when you're ready, but I suspect you'll want to see those cattle first. Amelia changed into the oldest dress she had brought, one that had already been stained and mended from previous veterinary work, and met Austin outside the main house. He had saddled a gentle bay mare for her, and she mounted with practiced ease. Where did you learn to ride like that? He asked as they headed toward the nearest pasture where sick cattle had been separated from the healthy herd. My father took me on calls throughout California. I have ridden everything from thoroughbreds to mules. She glanced at him. You are surprised. Most women I know ride side saddle and only for pleasure. I am not most women, Mr. Northwood. I'm beginning to see that. This time he did smile just slightly. And you can call me Austin. If we're going to be working together, no need for formalities. Then you must call me Amelia. They rode in companionable silence until they reached a large pen where about 20 cattle stood or lay in various states of distress. Amelia's heart sank at the sight. These animals were clearly suffering. They drooled excessively, their breathing was labored, and several showed signs of muscle tremors. She dismounted and approached the fence, studying the cattle carefully. How long have these animals been symptomatic? The worst ones, about 3 days. The others started showing signs yesterday. And the ones that died, how quickly did they progress from first symptoms to death? Austin leaned against the fence, his expression grim. Fast, maybe 4 or 5 days from the time we noticed something wrong. Amelia opened her satchel and pulled out a thick leather-bound volume. The title was embossed in gold, Diseases of Cattle, a Comprehensive Veterinary Guide. She had 3 such books with her, all from her father's extensive library. "What's that?" Austin asked. "Medical reference books. My father collected the best veterinary texts from around the world." She flipped through the pages, looking for the section on toxic presentations. The symptoms matched several possible conditions, but she needed more information. "Can you tell me what they have been eating? Have you changed their feed recently or moved them to new pastures?" Austin scratched his jaw. "Moved about 60 head to the west pasture 3 weeks back. That's when the first ones got sick." "Show me this west pasture," Amelia said immediately, closing the book. They rode west across rolling hills dotted with oak trees. The pasture in question was lush with spring growth, the grass still green despite the summer heat. Amelia dismounted and began walking slowly through the field, her eyes scanning the ground. "What are you looking for?" Austin asked, following her. "Plants. Many toxic plants are green and attractive to cattle, especially when they are hungry or when other forage is sparse." She knelt down, examining clusters of vegetation, then moved to another area. Her father had taught her to identify poisonous plants, and she had studied botanical illustrations for hours. It was Austin who spotted it first. "There's a lot of this white-flowered plant over here. Don't recall seeing it in other pastures." Amelia hurried over and felt her stomach drop. The plant had umbrella-like clusters of small white flowers and fern-like leaves. She touched it carefully, then stood back. "Water hemlock," she said quietly. "One of the most poisonous plants to cattle. Even a small amount can kill." Austin stared at the plants scattered throughout the pasture. "There must be hundreds of them. They thrive in wet areas. Was there a spring or creek that flooded this year?" "Yeah, we had heavy rains in April. The creek overflowed and watered this whole section." He looked sick. "I moved those cattle here. I killed them." "You could not have known," Amelia said firmly. "Water hemlock is not common in California pastures. This flood brought it in, probably washed seeds down from somewhere upstream." She pulled out her reference book again and found the section on water hemlock poisoning. But as she opened the book, Austin looked away, his jaw tight with what Amelia suddenly understood was shame. "Would you read what it says?" he asked quietly. "About the symptoms and such." Amelia looked at him carefully. "You cannot read." "Never learned," he said, his voice rough. "Been working ranches since I was 8 years old. No time for schooling." There was no judgment in Amelia's response, only compassion. She had seen plenty of working men who could not read it was common on the frontier. "Then I will read it to you," she said simply, and opened the book to the proper page. She read aloud in the fading sunlight, describing the symptoms of water hemlock poisoning. Excessive salivation, difficulty breathing, muscle tremors, convulsions, and death. Every symptom matched what they had observed. The book stated there was no cure once cattle had consumed a lethal dose, but that removing them from the source immediately and providing supportive care could save those who had eaten only small amounts. Austin listened intently, his eyes on the distant cattle. When she finished, he said, "So those animals in the sick pen, some of them might survive if we take care of them, possibly. We need to move all the cattle out of this pasture immediately and ensure none of the others have access to water hemlock. The animals showing mild symptoms should be given plenty of clean water and monitored closely. The severely affected ones," she trailed off, "are already dead. They just don't know it yet," Austin finished grimly. They rode back to the ranch as the sun set, painting the California hills gold and crimson. Kimball listened to Amelia's findings with a stony expression, then ordered his men to move every head of cattle out of the west pasture at first light. "You're sure about this?" he demanded. "You're sure it's this water hemlock?" "As sure as I can be without a laboratory analysis," Amelia said. "But the symptoms match perfectly, and the timing correlates with when the cattle were moved to that pasture. I can do a post-mortem examination of one of the dead animals tomorrow to look for plant material in the digestive tract, which would confirm the diagnosis." Kimball nodded slowly. "All right, we'll do as you say, but those sick cattle, I will do everything I can for them," Amelia promised. "Some may survive with proper care." That night, Amelia sat in her small room reading through her father's books by lamplight, making notes about water hemlock and its effects. She had told Kimball she was certain, but she needed to be absolutely sure. Too much was riding on her diagnosis, not just the ranch's survival, but her own credibility as a veterinarian. A soft knock on her door interrupted her studies. She opened it to find Austin standing in the hallway, his hat in his hands. "Sorry to disturb you, Miss Amelia," he said. "I wanted to ask, those books you have, could you read more of them to me, about cattle diseases and such? I've been a cattleman my whole life, but I only know what I've seen." Seems like there's a lot more to learn. Amelia felt something warm unfold in her chest. "Of course," she said. "Come in. We should leave the door open for propriety's sake, but there is enough light to read by." Austin settled onto the floor, his back against the wall, while Amelia sat in the room's single chair. She picked up a different volume, one that discussed general cattle health and disease prevention, and began to read. His attention never wavered. He asked intelligent questions about symptoms and treatments, about preventing disease through proper feeding and clean water. Amelia found herself explaining concepts her father had taught her, drawing on years of accumulated knowledge. It was close to midnight when she finally closed the book, her voice growing hoarse. "I should let you sleep," Austin said, standing. "We've got a long day tomorrow." "Austin," Amelia said as he turned to leave, "not being able to read does not make you ignorant. You know cattle better than most men I have met. You notice things, you care about them. That matters more than books." He looked at her for a long moment, something complicated passing across his face. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not making me feel small about it." "Never," Amelia said. "We all have different knowledge. I can read medical texts, but I cannot rope a steer or break a horse. Everyone has value." After he left, Amelia lay in bed thinking about the cowboy with whiskey-colored eyes who wanted to learn, who listened to her read with the intensity of someone hungry for knowledge. She had not expected to find such a man on a cattle ranch, had not expected to feel this flutter of interest in someone she had known for less than a day. The next morning, Amelia performed a necropsy on one of the dead steers. It was grim work in the heat, but Austin assisted her without complaint, following her instructions precisely as she carefully examined the animal's stomach contents. She found partially digested plant material that matched the water hemlock they had seen in the pasture. "That confirms it," she said, straightening up. "Water hemlock poisoning." Over the following days, Amelia worked tirelessly with the sick cattle. She had Austin and the other ranch hands provide constant access to fresh water, which helped flush the toxins from the animals' systems. She mixed activated charcoal with molasses and had them drench the mildly affected cattle, hoping to absorb some of the remaining poison in their digestive tracts. It was a technique her father had used with some success in poisoning cases. Every evening after the work was done, Austin came to her room and she read to him. They went through chapters on blackleg disease, anthrax, Texas fever, foot and mouth disease. She read about proper nutrition, about identifying good pasture from poor, about the importance of clean water and adequate shelter. Austin absorbed it all like parched ground soaking up rain, but they did not only discuss cattle. As the days passed, they began to talk about their lives. Amelia told him about growing up in San Francisco, about sneaking into her father's study to read his medical books, about the heartbreak of losing her father just when she was ready to truly work alongside him. "My mother thinks I am foolish," she confessed one night. "She wants me to marry a banker or a lawyer, someone respectable. She cannot understand why I want to treat sick animals." "You're not foolish," Austin said firmly. "You're brave. You came all the way out here alone to a ranch full of strangers knowing they would doubt you. That takes courage." "I had no choice," Amelia said. "This is all I know how to do. It is all I want to do." Austin told her about his own childhood, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 7, about being taken in by a ranch owner who worked him hard but taught him everything about cattle and horses. "Never went to school a day in my life," he said. "Was always too busy working. By the time I was old enough to think about learning to read seemed too late." "It is never too late," Amelia said. "I could teach you if you wanted, basic reading and writing." His eyes lit up, then dimmed. "Couldn't pay you for lessons." "I am not asking for payment, Austin. I am offering because I want to, because you have been invaluable in helping me with these cattle and because—" She hesitated, then decided to be honest, "because I like spending time with you." The admission hung in the air between them. Austin's gaze held hers, and Amelia felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the California summer. "I like spending time with you too," he said softly. "More than I should, probably. You're an educated city lady and I'm just a ranch hand." "You are not just anything," Amelia said. "You are intelligent and capable and kind. Those things matter far more than whether you had formal schooling." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his serious face. "You really mean that?" "I do." They began reading lessons the next night. Amelia wrote out the alphabet on paper she had brought for taking medical notes, and Austin practiced forming letters with a carpenter's pencil. His hands were rough and scarred from years of ranch work, but he held the pencil carefully. His tongue caught between his teeth in concentration as he copied the letters she wrote. "This is harder than breaking a bronco," he muttered after his 5th attempt at writing his name. "But you are doing it," Amelia encouraged. "Look, your letters are much clearer than they were an hour ago." The sick cattle began to recover. Of the 20 animals in the sick pen, 14 survived once the toxin cleared their systems. It was better than Amelia had hoped. More importantly, no new cases appeared once all the cattle were removed from the contaminated pasture. Kimball sent men to dig up every water hemlock plant they could find in the west pasture, piling them up and burning them. "You saved my herd," Kimball told Amelia grudgingly. "Saved my ranch, really. We couldn't have taken many more losses. I am glad I could help, Amelia said. I would recommend keeping cattle away from that pasture until you are certain all the water hemlock is gone. And perhaps consulting a botanist about what other toxic plants might grow on your property. Will do. Kimball shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. I was wrong about you. You know your business as well as your father did, maybe better in some ways. I'll make sure other ranchers know it. The validation meant more to Amelia than she expected. This was what she had been fighting for, the chance to prove herself capable, to earn respect through her work rather than being dismissed because of her gender. She had been at the Circle K ranch for 2 weeks when Austin asked her to go riding with him on Sunday afternoon, their one half-day of rest. They rode into the hills, following a trail through oak groves to a high meadow that overlooked the valley. The view was spectacular, rolling golden hills stretching toward the blue shimmer of the Pacific Ocean in the distance. I come up here when I need to think, Austin said as they dismounted. It's peaceful. They sat in the grass, and Austin pulled out the paper on which he had been practicing his letters. I wanted to show you something, he said. He had written a full sentence in careful, painstaking script. Amelia Windsor is a good teacher. Joy flooded through her. Austin, this is wonderful. Your handwriting is very legible. Took me 2 hours last night, he admitted. But I wanted to write something you could read instead of you always reading to me. I do not mind reading to you, Amelia said. I enjoy it, I know, but I want to be able to read too. Want to be able to read those cattle books myself someday so I can be a better cattleman. He paused. And maybe other books too, stories and such. You talk about novels sometimes, about characters and adventures. I'd like to know what that's like. I will help you, Amelia promised. For as long as I am here. How long will that be? Austin asked quietly. Amelia's chest tightened. She had been trying not to think about leaving. I suppose I should return to San Francisco soon. I have stayed longer than I intended. My mother will be worried. Do you want to go back? I do not know, Amelia admitted. I have responsibilities there. My father's practice, his clients, but... She looked out at the vast California landscape, so different from the crowded streets of San Francisco. I feel useful here, needed. In the city, there are other veterinarians. But out here, ranchers have few options when their animals sicken. Then stay, Austin said. Not here at the Circle K necessarily, but in this part of California. Set up a practice for ranch animals. God knows there's enough need for it. I am a woman alone, Amelia said. It would be difficult, perhaps impossible. You wouldn't have to be alone. Amelia turned to look at him, her heart suddenly pounding. What are you saying? Austin met her eyes steadily. I'm saying I've never met anyone like you, Amelia. You're smart and brave and you care about things that matter. These past 2 weeks, spending evenings with you, learning to read, talking about everything under the sun, I've never been happier. And I know I'm just a cowboy who can barely write his own name, and you're an educated lady from the city, but I'm hoping maybe that doesn't matter as much as how we feel about each other. It does not matter at all, Amelia whispered. Austin, I have been trying not to care for you because I thought I would have to leave, but I cannot help it. You are thoughtful and intelligent, and you see me as I am, not as what society says I should be. That is more valuable than any amount of formal education. He reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle. Then stay. Please, we could make it work. I've saved up money from working ranches. It's not much, but it's enough to rent a small place, maybe buy some land eventually. You could treat cattle and horses for the ranches around here, and I could help you. I know animals, I know the ranchers. We'd make a good team. We would, Amelia said, realizing the truth of it. We already do. Is that a yes? Austin asked, hope naked in his face. Yes, Amelia said. Yes to staying, yes to working together, yes to— She hesitated, suddenly shy. Yes to courting, Austin finished. To seeing if we can build something together, maybe build a life. Yes, Amelia said again, and then Austin was kissing her, soft and careful, his hand cradling her cheek like she was something precious. When they returned to the ranch that evening, Amelia was glowing with happiness. Mrs. Kimball took one look at her face and smiled knowingly. "That Austin Northwood is a good man," she said quietly. "One of the best. You could do far worse." "I could not do better," Amelia said honestly. She stayed at the Circle K for another week, treating a few cattle that developed minor ailments and continuing Austin's reading lessons. His progress was remarkable. He was motivated in a way that made him practice every spare moment. He had moved beyond simple sentences to reading basic passages from her veterinary books, sounding out words carefully. Amelia sent a telegram to her mother explaining that she was extending her stay in California to explore the possibility of establishing a rural veterinary practice. The response was predictably disapproving, but Amelia was 22 years old and her father had left his veterinary practice to her. She could make her own decisions. When she finally prepared to leave the Circle K, it was not to return to San Francisco, but to travel to nearby Calistoga, the closest town, to investigate the possibility of renting office space and living quarters. Austin rode with her, having asked Kimball for a few days off. Calistoga was a small but growing town in Napa County, California, known for its hot springs and increasingly for its vineyards. The main street had the usual assortment of buildings: a general store, a saloon, a hotel, a blacksmith, and several other businesses. Amelia looked at the town with a practical eye, noting its central location among numerous ranches and farms. They found a small building for rent on a side street, a simple wooden structure with 2 rooms. "The front room could be your office and examination space," Austin said, walking through the dusty interior. "The back room is big enough to live in until we can afford better." The word made Amelia's heart swell. It would need a lot of work, she said practically, but she was already envisioning how it could be set up. "I'm handy with tools," Austin said. "I could build you an examination table, shelves for your books and medicines. Maybe a small barn out back for patients that need to stay overnight." They rented the building that afternoon. The landlord, a grizzled man named Mr. Peterson, looked skeptical when Amelia explained she was a veterinarian, but he accepted her money readily enough. "There's a dock in town for people," he said, "but never had one for animals. Might be some want that." "I certainly hope so," Amelia said. They spent the next week transforming the little building into a veterinary office. Austin proved to be skilled at carpentry, building a sturdy examination table and floor-to-ceiling shelves. Amelia arranged her father's medical instruments and books with loving care. She ordered supplies from San Francisco: medicines, bandages, surgical tools. She painted a sign herself in careful letters: "Amelia Windsor, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine." "You're really doing this," Austin said, watching her hang the sign above the front door. "We are really doing this," Amelia corrected. "I could not do it without you." Austin had found work on a ranch just outside Calistoga, a smaller operation than the Circle K but well managed. He spent his days working cattle and his evenings helping Amelia set up her practice. At night, they sat together in the back room and she continued teaching him to read, progressing from veterinary texts to actual novels. She had brought a copy of Ivanhoe from San Francisco, and Austin was slowly working his way through it. "This is amazing," he said one night, stumbling over the word knighthood but getting it eventually. I never knew books could be like this, could make you see whole other worlds. That is the magic of reading, Amelia said, watching his face as he concentrated on the page. She loved seeing his mind work, loved watching him discover the pleasure of literature. Amelia's first patient in Calistoga was a farmer's milk cow with mastitis. She treated the infection successfully, and the farmer told his neighbors. Within a month, she had a steady trickle of clients: horses with colic, sheep with foot rot, a dog that had been kicked by a mule. Word spread that the lady veterinarian knew her business, and gradually the skepticism faded. Austin became indispensable. He had a gift for calming nervous animals and for understanding what Amelia needed before she asked. He also knew most of the local ranchers and farmers, having worked in the area for years, and his endorsement of Amelia's skills carried weight. 3 months after opening her practice, on a crisp October evening, Austin proposed properly. He took Amelia to dinner at the town's small hotel restaurant, a rare extravagance. After the meal, he pulled out a small box. "I know we've been courting and we've talked about building a life together," he said, his hands slightly shaking. "But I want to make it official. Amelia Windsor, will you marry me?" The ring was simple, a small gold band with a single modest diamond, but Amelia did not care about its size. She cared about the hope and love in Austin's eyes, about the life they were already building together. "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married in December of 1884 in a small ceremony at Calistoga's church. Mrs. Kimball came all the way from the Circle K Ranch to attend, as did several of Amelia's regular clients. Amelia's mother sent a terse telegram offering congratulations, but did not attend, still disapproving of her daughter's choices. It hurt, but Amelia was learning to build her own family from the people who loved and supported her. After the wedding, they moved into a small house they had rented on the edge of town, a vast improvement over living in the back room of the veterinary office. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a parlor with a fireplace. Austin built bookshelves in the parlor, and Amelia filled them with her growing collection of veterinary texts and novels they could read together. Their first year of marriage was hard work but deeply happy. Amelia's practice grew steadily. She developed a reputation for taking on difficult cases that other veterinarians would not attempt. She performed successful surgeries on horses, treated an outbreak of sheep pox on a local ranch, and even saved a rancher's prize bull that had eaten loco weed. Austin continued working at the local ranch, but he also studied veterinary medicine with intense focus. Amelia taught him everything she knew, and he proved to have a natural aptitude for diagnosis. He could look at a sick animal and often identify what was wrong through careful observation. And the knowledge he was steadily accumulating from the books Amelia had him read. "You could be a veterinarian yourself," Amelia told him one evening as he correctly diagnosed a horse with heaves just from watching it breathe. "Don't have the formal education," Austin said. "No one would take me seriously." "I will take you seriously," Amelia said. "You are my partner in this practice, Austin, not just my assistant. Your knowledge is valuable." She had new business cards printed: Windsor Veterinary Practice, Amelia Windsor DVM, and Austin Northwood, Consulting Veterinarian. When Austin saw the cards, his eyes grew suspiciously bright. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Amelia said, "because it is the truth. This practice belongs to both of us." In the summer of 1886, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She had always wanted children, but she worried about how pregnancy would affect her practice. Many of her clients required her to ride out to their ranches, to work with large animals in dusty corrals and muddy fields. Austin was protective but practical. "You keep working as long as you feel able," he said. "And when you can't, I'll handle the ranch calls. You've taught me enough that I can manage most cases." "But you have your own work," Amelia protested. "I talked to my boss. He's willing to let me work part-time, especially if it means having reliable veterinary care for his animals." "We'll make it work, Amelia. We always do." Amelia worked through most of her pregnancy, though she let Austin handle the more strenuous cases as her belly grew. The townspeople of Calistoga had grown fond of their lady veterinarian, and many women stopped by the office to offer advice and hand-sewn baby clothes. Their daughter was born in March of 1887, during a rainstorm that turned the streets to rivers of mud. The birth was long and difficult, attended by the town's doctor and 2 experienced midwives. When Amelia finally held her daughter, a red-faced, squalling bundle of fury, she wept with relief and joy. "She's perfect," Austin whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand with one calloused finger. "What should we name her?" They named her Rose, for Amelia's grandmother who had encouraged her love of learning. Rose Northwood was a healthy, demanding baby who kept them both up at night and exhausted during the day. But Amelia could not imagine loving anything more, except for the man who walked the floor with Rose at 3 in the morning, singing off key cowboy songs while Amelia caught a few precious hours of sleep. Amelia returned to work slowly, taking Rose with her to the office and setting up a cradle in the corner where the baby slept between feedings. Austin took over most of the ranch calls, and Amelia was amazed at how much he had learned. Ranchers who had initially been skeptical of the Cowboy veterinarian soon learned that Austin Northwood knew his business. He could diagnose and treat most common ailments, and he knew when a case required Amelia's more advanced surgical skills or medical knowledge. They worked as a true team, consulting on difficult cases, reading new veterinary journals together, and constantly learning. In the evenings, after Rose was asleep, they still read together, though now it was Austin who often read aloud while Amelia mended clothes or prepared medicines for the next day's patients. In 1889, they bought a small ranch of their own, 5 miles outside Calistoga. It had a house that needed work, a good barn and enough pasture for horses and a few cattle. They moved the veterinary practice to the ranch, converting the barn into a proper clinic with examination rooms and space for animals that needed extended care. "We can breed horses," Austin suggested. "Good ranch horses are always in demand, and it would give us a steadier income when the veterinary practice is slow." They started with 2 mares and a stallion, carefully selected bloodlines that would produce strong, intelligent working horses. Austin's expertise in horses proved invaluable. He trained the young horses himself, producing animals that were sought after by ranchers throughout the region. Rose grew into a bright, curious child who followed her parents around the ranch, asking endless questions about the animals. By the time she was 4, she could identify most common horse ailments and knew the names of all the instruments in the clinic. "She's going to be a veterinarian like her mother," Austin said proudly, watching Rose carefully examine a barn cat with a splinter in its paw. "Or a rancher like her father," Amelia said. "Or something entirely different. As long as she is happy and healthy, I do not care what she becomes." In 1891, they had a second child, a son they named Daniel. He was quieter than Rose had been, with Austin's thoughtful eyes and Amelia's serious expression. Daniel was content to sit in the barn and watch the horses for hours, perfectly peaceful in the presence of animals. Their practice continued to grow. Amelia had clients from as far as 50 miles away. ranchers who would bring their sick cattle in wagons or pay her to travel to their ranches. She performed increasingly complex surgeries, pioneering some techniques that she later wrote about for veterinary journals. Her father would have been proud. Austin became a respected veterinarian in his own right, despite his lack of formal credentials. The ranchers trusted him because he was one of them, because he understood their lives and their concerns. But he also had real knowledge, carefully accumulated through years of study and practice. He could read medical texts fluently now, though he still sometimes asked Amelia to read passages aloud in the evenings because he loved listening to her voice. One evening in 1893, they sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching their children play in the yard. Rose, now 6, was trying to teach 4-year-old Daniel how to rope a fence post. The summer air was warm and sweet with the scent of hay and wild flowers. "You ever regret it?" Austin asked quietly. Giving up San Francisco the chance to work in a real city practice, Amelia looked at him in surprise. "Never. Not once. This is the life I was meant to live. This work, this place, you and the children, this is everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know I wanted it." "I think about where I'd be if you hadn't come to the Circle K that day," Austin said. "Probably still just a ranch hand, unable to read, no future beyond the next cattle drive. You changed my whole life, Amelia." "You changed mine too," Amelia said. "You showed me that intelligence and worth are not about formal education or social position. You believed in me when most men would not have, treated me as an equal when I was used to being dismissed. You made me braver than I knew I could be." Austin took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "We made each other better." "We did," Amelia agreed. As the years passed, their ranch prospered. They built a larger house with enough bedrooms for their growing family and a proper library where Austin could pursue his love of reading. He particularly enjoyed adventure novels and had worked his way through Jules Verne and Mark Twain. Amelia loved watching him read, seeing the concentration on his face, knowing how far he had come from the cowboy who could not write his own name. Rose grew into a determined young woman who did indeed want to be a veterinarian. Amelia began teaching her formally when she was 12, just as her own father had taught her. Austin taught Rose about horses and cattle, about reading animal behavior and understanding what they needed. Daniel proved to have his father's gift with horses. At 10 years old, he could gentle the most skittish colt, could break a green horse to saddle without ever using harsh methods. He was quiet and patient, with an almost uncanny understanding of equine psychology. In 1897, they had a third child, another daughter they named Grace. She arrived during one of the busiest seasons the veterinary practice had ever seen, and Amelia was back at work within 2 weeks, unable to ignore the stream of sick animals that needed her care. "You're going to work yourself to death," Austin scolded gently, finding her in the clinic at midnight, stitching up a dog that had tangled with a porcupine. "Says the man who was up before dawn delivering a calf," Amelia retorted, but she smiled at him. "We are both incapable of refusing an animal in need." "Truth," Austin admitted. He took over the stitching, his hands now as skilled as hers at the delicate work. "Go feed our daughter. I'll finish here." Amelia watched him work for a moment, marveling as she often did at the life they had built. They were partners in every sense of the word, sharing the work and the joys and the challenges. It was not always easy. There were lean months when clients could not pay, sick animals they could not save, exhausting days that stretched into exhausting weeks. But it was good. It was theirs. By the turn of the century, Windsor veterinary practice was known throughout Northern California. Amelia had published several articles in veterinary journals about her techniques for treating cattle diseases, including a comprehensive piece on identifying and managing poisonous plant exposures. That article, illustrated with careful drawings of water hemlock and other toxic plants, had helped prevent deaths on ranches across the country. Austin had become a sought-after lecturer at ranchers' conventions, speaking about practical animal husbandry and disease prevention. He always credited his wife as his teacher, but everyone who heard him speak recognized his own deep knowledge and genuine expertise. Rose, at 18, announced her intention to attend veterinary college in San Francisco. Amelia helped her apply and wrote letters of recommendation, though she knew her daughter hardly needed them. Rose's knowledge and experience far exceeded that of most applicants. "Are you sure you want to leave the ranch?" Amelia asked. "You could continue learning here." "I want to be like you, Mother," Rose said. "I want to have credentials that no one can question to learn from the best teachers available, and then I want to come back here and work with you and Father. This is where I belong." Amelia embraced her daughter, proud beyond words. Daniel, at 16, had no interest in formal education. He wanted to expand the horse breeding operation, to develop bloodlines that would be renowned throughout California. Austin supported the plan wholeheartedly, and they began making arrangements to purchase additional land. Grace, at 7, was still young enough that her future was unwritten. She showed interest in everything: the veterinary work, the horses, even the business side of running the ranch. Amelia suspected she would end up doing something unexpected and brilliant. In 1905, on their 20th wedding anniversary, Austin surprised Amelia with a gift. It was a book, leather-bound and beautiful, with blank pages waiting to be filled. "I thought you could write down everything you know," he said. "About cattle diseases, about treatment techniques, everything you've learned over the years. Not just for veterinary journals, but a whole book. You could help veterinarians and ranchers across the country." Amelia was touched by his faith in her. "I do not know if I have enough to fill a whole book." "You do," Austin said firmly. "I've watched you work for 20 years, Amelia. You know things that no one else knows. You should share that knowledge." She started writing that year, working on the book in the evenings and during slow periods at the clinic. Austin read each chapter as she finished it, offering suggestions and corrections. His eye for detail and practical experience proved invaluable. The book, Practical Veterinary Medicine for Cattle and Horses, a guide for ranchers and veterinarians, was published in 1908. It became a standard reference work, found in veterinary offices and ranch houses throughout the West. Amelia received letters from grateful ranchers who had used her techniques to save their herds, from veterinarians who thanked her for sharing her knowledge so generously. "Your father would be so proud," Austin told her when the first published copy arrived at their ranch. "I'm proud of you." "I could not have written it without you," Amelia said honestly. "So much of the practical knowledge came from you, from what you have taught me about really understanding cattle and horses, not just treating them as medical cases." Rose graduated from veterinary college in 1909 and returned to Calistoga, where she joined her parents' practice officially. Having 3 veterinarians allowed them to serve even more clients and take on more complex cases. Rose brought new knowledge from her formal education, while Amelia and Austin provided decades of practical experience. Together, they were formidable. Daniel married a rancher's daughter in 1910 and expanded the horse breeding operation significantly. The Northwood horses became known as some of the finest working horses in California, intelligent and steady and perfectly suited for ranch work. Grace, growing into a beautiful and headstrong young woman, announced her intention to attend university and study business. "Someone needs to manage all this," she said, gesturing at the thriving ranch and veterinary practice. "Mother and father are brilliant with animals, Rose too, and Daniel understands horses better than anyone, but none of you are particularly good at the business side of things. That's where I come in." Amelia could not argue with her logic. Grace had a sharp mind for numbers and organization, and under her management, the various aspects of their enterprises ran more smoothly than ever. In 1915, Amelia and Austin celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Daniel and his wife had 3 children now, and Rose had married a fellow veterinarian and had twins. The ranch house rang with laughter and chaos, exactly as Amelia had always dreamed. That evening, after the celebration quieted and the grandchildren were asleep, Amelia and Austin sat on their porch as they had done so many evenings over the years. The California hills stretched out before them, golden in the sunset. 30 years, Austin said wonderingly. "Seems like yesterday you were reading to me about water hemlock, and I was too embarrassed to admit I could not raid." "That was the night I started to fall in love with you," Amelia confessed. "Watching you listen so carefully, seeing how much you wanted to learn. You had such hunger for knowledge, such determination to improve yourself. I fell in love with you the first day," Austin admitted. "Watching you examine those dead cattle with such focus and competence, refusing to be intimidated by Kimball or anyone else. You were magnificent." Amelia laughed. "I was terrified. I kept thinking, what if I was wrong? What if I could not figure out what was killing the cattle?" "But you did figure it out. You saved that ranch and you launched your whole career, and you gave me a life I never could have imagined." Austin pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "Teaching me to raid was the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. It opened up the whole world." "You would have learned eventually," Amelia said. "You are too intelligent and too curious to have remained illiterate forever." "Maybe. But you're the one who taught me, who believed I could learn. You're the one who saw past the cowboy who could not read and write to the man I could become." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged, one by one, in the darkening sky. Amelia thought about their journey, from that first meeting on a ranch in crisis, through the challenging early years of building a practice and a life together, to this moment of peace and prosperity surrounded by family. "You remember when I first read to you from the veterinary books?" Amelia asked. "You were so focused, like you were memorizing every word." "I was," Austin said. "I did not want to miss anything, and I loved listening to your voice, the way you explained complicated concepts so clearly. I could have listened to you read for hours, still could." "I still have those books," Amelia said. "The ones I brought to the Circle K, they are in the library." "I know, I see them every day," Austin said softly. "Sometimes when I am looking for something to read, I pull one down and remember those first nights, sitting in that tiny room while you read to me about cattle diseases. That was when I started to hope that maybe you could care for me the way I cared for you." "I did care for you," Amelia said. "I cared for you so much it frightened me, because I thought we came from such different worlds. I thought you would never see me as anything but the educated city girl who was too proud for her own good." "I never thought that," Austin said. "I thought you were brave and brilliant and beautiful. I thought I had no business dreaming about someone like you. But then you offered to teach me to read, and you looked at me like I mattered, like my inability to read did not make me less than other men. That was when I knew I had to take a chance." Amelia lifted her head to look at him. Even after 30 years of marriage, his face still made her heart beat faster. He was 54 now, his dark hair streaked with silver, his face weathered by years of outdoor work. But his eyes were still the same warm whiskey color, still filled with intelligence and kindness. "I am so glad you took that chance," she said. "I am so glad I came to that ranch, that the cattle got sick, that you could not read and I could. Every circumstance that brought us together, even the difficult ones, I am grateful for all of it." Austin kissed her, gentle and sweet. "Best decision I ever made, asking you to read those books to me." "Best decision I ever made saying yes," Amelia replied. "The years that followed were good ones, though not without challenges." They lost clients to age and economic downturns, faced droughts that made ranching difficult, and dealt with the inevitable sorrows of life, the death of Mrs. Kimball, who had been like a mother to them both, the loss of beloved horses and dogs that had been part of the family. But there were far more joys than sorrows. Rose's practice flourished, and she developed new techniques for equine surgery that brought clients from across the state. Daniel's horses won awards at shows throughout California. Grace married a businessman from San Francisco who supported her ambitions, and she opened a consulting firm that helped ranchers and farmers manage their businesses more efficiently. Amelia continued writing, publishing a second book on equine medicine and numerous articles on various veterinary topics. She became a mentor to young veterinarians, especially women who faced the same skepticism and discrimination she had encountered. Austin never stopped learning. He taught himself advanced mathematics so he could better understand breeding genetics. He learned Spanish so he could communicate more effectively with many of the ranch workers in the region. He read voraciously, everything from Shakespeare to scientific journals, making up for all those lost years when books had been closed to him. In 1925, they celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. The celebration was smaller than their 30th had been, just family and a few close friends. But it was perfect. Their children toasted them. Their grandchildren performed a somewhat chaotic play they had written about their grandparents' romance. And as the sun set, Amelia and Austin danced slowly in the courtyard of their ranch house. 40 years, Amelia murmured. "How did we get so old? Speak for yourself," Austin said. "I feel 18 when I am with you." Amelia laughed. "Liar, we are both ancient, but I would not change a single day." "Not one," Austin challenged. "Not even that time the bull nearly trampled you. Or when Rose had pneumonia and we thought we would lose her. Or the drought of '97 that nearly broke us. Not even those days," Amelia said firmly. "Because we faced them together and we survived them together. Every challenge made us stronger." Austin pulled her closer. "I love you, Amelia Northwood. I loved you when you were a determined young woman trying to prove herself in a man's world, and I love you now when you are a renowned veterinarian and author who has proven herself 1,000 times over. I will love you until my last breath." "And I love you," Amelia said, her voice thick with emotion. "You are the best man I have ever known, Austin Northwood. The smartest, the kindest, the most wonderful. And I will love you beyond my last breath, into whatever comes after." They danced until the stars filled the sky, while their family watched with tears and smiles, knowing they were witnessing something rare and precious. A love that had endured through 4 decades, grown deeper with time, and showed no signs of fading. In their later years, Amelia and Austin gradually turned over more of the veterinary practice to Rose and her husband, though they never fully retired. There was always an animal that needed their expertise, always a rancher who specifically requested the legendary Amelia Windsor or her husband Austin. They spent more time together, just the two of them. They took long rides into the hills, visited the places that had been important in their life together. They sat on the porch in the evenings, sometimes talking, sometimes reading, sometimes just holding hands in comfortable silence. Austin still asked Amelia to read to him sometimes, even though he was perfectly capable of reading himself. She would read from novels or newspapers or veterinary journals, and he would listen with the same focused attention he had shown that first night 45 years ago. "Why do you still want me to read to you?" Amelia asked one evening. "You are a better reader than I am now, faster and with better comprehension." Austin smiled. "Because it reminds me of how we began, because I love your voice, because it is our thing, something we have always done together." "Why would I ever want to stop?" "I will never stop," Amelia promised. "I will read to you until my voice gives out. And I will listen until my ears fail," Austin said, "which hopefully will be never." They were blessed with good health well into their 70s. Amelia credited it to staying active and useful, to always having animals and family that needed them. Austin said it was stubbornness. They were both too stubborn to get old and sick. In 1933, they celebrated their 48th wedding anniversary quietly, just the two of them. Amelia had made Austin's favorite meal, and they ate on the porch watching the sunset paint the hills gold and crimson. "You remember the first sunset we watched together?" Austin asked. "Up in that meadow above the Circle K when I asked you to stay in California." "I remember everything about that day," Amelia said. "I was so nervous, so afraid you were going to say something that would make leaving impossible. And then you did, and I was terrified and thrilled at the same time." "I was terrified too," Austin admitted. "I kept thinking, what if she says no? What if she laughs at me for thinking a cowboy like me could be with someone like her?" "I never would have laughed," Amelia said softly. "I was already so in love with you by then. I was just waiting for you to see me as something other than your teacher." "I always saw you as more than that," Austin said. "From the very beginning, you were everything." That night, they lay in bed talking until late, reminiscing about their life together. They talked about the cattle they had saved and the ones they had lost, about their children and grandchildren, about the veterinary practice and the ranch, and all the adventures they had shared. "I have had a good life," Austin said as sleep began to claim him. "The best life because of you." "Because of us," Amelia corrected, curling against his warmth. "We built this life together." "Together," Austin agreed and kissed her forehead. "Always together." He died peacefully in his sleep that night, 73 years old, holding Amelia's hand. She woke to find him gone, and the grief was overwhelming, a physical pain that made it hard to breathe. But even through her tears, she was grateful. Grateful that he had not suffered, that they had spent their last evening together sharing memories and love, that their last words to each other had been tender. The funeral was huge. It seemed like every rancher in Northern California came to pay respects to Austin Northwood, the cowboy who had become a respected veterinarian, the man who had helped so many of them over the years. They told stories about his kindness, his expertise, his gentle way with animals and people alike. Rose spoke about her father with tears streaming down her face, talking about how he had taught her that real education came from curiosity and determination, not just from schools. Daniel talked about learning horsemanship from the best teacher in the world. Grace spoke about her father's intelligence and his love of learning, how he had read thousands of books and could discuss anything from philosophy to science. Amelia could not speak at the funeral. Her grief was too raw, too deep. But afterward, she wrote about Austin for a veterinary journal, a tribute to a man who had revolutionized his own life through determination, and who had been her partner in every way for nearly 50 years. The weeks after Austin's death were the hardest of Amelia's life, harder even than losing her father. She wandered through the ranch house they had built together, seeing Austin everywhere. In the library he had loved, in the barn he had designed, in the porch where they had watched countless sunsets. Rose tried to convince her mother to move in with her, but Amelia refused. "This is my home," she said. "Mine and your father's. I'm not leaving it." She found solace in work, treating animals with the same care and attention she always had. She found comfort in her family, especially her grandchildren, who carried pieces of Austin in their faces and mannerisms. And she found peace in reading. Every evening, Amelia sat on the porch with one of the veterinary books she had brought to the Circle K Ranch all those years ago. She read aloud, even though there was no one to listen, because it made her feel close to Austin. She could almost see him sitting there, head tilted slightly as he concentrated on every word, asking thoughtful questions, making connections between what she read and what he had observed. One evening, as she read about water hemlock poisoning the disease that had brought them together, she found a piece of paper tucked into the book. It was old and yellowed, covered in painstaking handwriting she recognized as Austin's from when he was first learning to write. "Amelia Windsor is a good teacher," it said, the sentence he had shown her that day in the meadow. But there was more, words she had never seen before, written in slightly better handwriting as if he had added them later. "Amelia Windsor is a good teacher. She is also kind and smart and beautiful. I love her. I will always love her. Even when I am gone, my love will stay with her. Austin Northwood." Amelia wept, holding the precious paper to her heart. It was so like Austin to leave her this gift, this reminder that their love transcended even death. She lived for 7 more years, staying active in the veterinary practice and watching her grandchildren grow. She published a final book, a memoir about her life as a woman veterinarian in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Much of it was about Austin, about their partnership and their love story. The book became unexpectedly popular, read by people far beyond the veterinary community. Amelia received letters from women who were inspired by her story, from men who wanted to know more about Austin's journey from illiteracy to respected veterinarian, from couples who saw their own relationships reflected in the deep partnership Amelia described. In 1940, at the age of 78, Amelia's health began to fail. She had lived a long and full life, but her body was finally wearing out. Rose and her family moved into the ranch house to care for her, and Amelia spent her final months surrounded by love. On a warm evening in June, with the windows open to let in the scent of hay and wildflowers, Amelia asked Rose to bring her the old veterinary book, the one about cattle diseases. "Read to me," she asked her daughter, "the section about water hemlock." Rose, understanding what her mother needed, read the familiar passage about symptoms and treatments. As she read, Amelia closed her eyes and smiled, remembering Austin's face as he listened to these same words 56 years ago, the way his eyes had lit up with understanding and curiosity. When Rose finished reading, Amelia whispered, "That is how we began, you know. I read to him from this book because he could not read himself. And he listened like it was the most important thing in the world. That was when I knew I loved him." "He loved you too, Mother," Rose said, tears in her eyes. "Everyone could see how much you loved each other." "We had a good life," Amelia said. "The best life, built on cattle sickness and books and a cowboy who wanted to learn." She paused, her breathing labored. "Tell the grandchildren that love is about partnership, about respecting each other's strengths and supporting each other's weaknesses. Tell them that education comes in many forms, and intelligence has nothing to do with formal schooling. Tell them their grandfather was the smartest, best man I ever knew. I will tell them, Mother. I promise." Amelia died that night, peacefully in her sleep, just as Austin had. Her family laid her to rest beside him on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together, under a sky full of stars. On their shared headstone, Rose had inscribed a simple epitaph that captured the essence of their love story. Amelia Windsor Northwood, DVM, 1862. 1940 Austin Northwood, veterinarian, 1861. 1933 partners in life, in love, and in service to animals. She taught him to raid. Together they built a legacy. The ranch and veterinary practice continued for generations, run by their descendants who carried on the values Amelia and Austin had embodied: compassion for animals, dedication to learning, and the belief that love and partnership could overcome any obstacle. And in the library of the ranch house, carefully preserved in a place of honor, sat the old veterinary books that Amelia had brought to the Circle K Ranch in 1884. Inside one of them, protected in a frame, was Austin's painstaking note: "Amelia Windsor is a good teacher. I love her. I will always love her." It remained there for over a century, a testament to a love that began with books about cattle sickness and a cowboy who could not read but who listened with his whole heart while she read aloud. A love that grew into something beautiful and lasting. A love that inspired generations and proved that the best partnerships are built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the courage to see past surface differences to the truth of each other's hearts. Their story became legend in Calistoga and throughout Northern California. The tale of the lady veterinarian and the cowboy, of water hemlock and books read aloud, of a love that transformed two lives and left a legacy of compassion, knowledge, and partnership that enriched everyone it touched. It was a reminder that the best love stories are not about grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices, but about two people choosing each other every day, supporting each other's growth, and building a life together, one moment, one kindness, one shared sunset at a time.